Well, speaking of stars, we're going to go to the stars. We're talking about First Man.
Yeah, we are. And this movie, you guys would definitely, I'll cut in real quick, you should see it in the theaters.
Yeah, you have to.
So some theaters, I don't know where you guys are at, but the theaters here, sometimes they have this seats that have, like, they move while you watch the film.
You see this in D-Box?
I did see it in D-Box. Oh yeah. Okay, so...
Okay.
So the D-Box, guys, is you sit in the film, it vibrates, it moves, it tilts back. It gives you like a 4D experience as opposed to a 3D. So for this movie, First Man, when we're going out to space and they hit the G-force, I was like, yes, I have to sit in this chair. I got to get the experience. I got to be with them.
That makes sense. I didn't even think about that.
You guys laughed at me when I saw it saw stuff in D-Box, but go ahead.
I mean,
because you saw random things. You're like, I'm gonna go see Justice League. Like that doesn't work.
Great.
You saw Moana in D-Box. Yeah. I don't know what you're talking. I gotta ride the waves, guys.
If I'm on the surfboard, I need to feel it.
like this makes sense for that. That was a good idea.
So how was it in D-Box?
It was good. Now, it was very good in D-Box. It's a good experiment because in those. The camera action in this film, when you're taking off, guys, like you're inside the pilot seat, you inside the cockpit, and so when you're in the D-Box and the thing is moving on, and they're shaking and you're shaking, you're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? It's perfect because you're shaking a whole lot, and the screen is a little bit blurry because they're shaking. So you just see it just all works together, guys.
Yeah, it does.
It does. It looks good.
I didn't see it in D-Box.
Yeah, and then plus it was a little bit more comfortable for me because. If you guys remember, for a long time listeners, I went on vacation, and one of my vacations, I went to Disney World, and they had like this space shuttle takeoff simulator where you sit down in a room and it's like kind of spin. So it's like a G-force simulator. So I was I took off. So I was watching this film again, brought me back to that state, and I cannot be an astronaut, guys. I can't.
Well, you did it while you were drinking.
Yes,
and then you got in a G-force thing.
I know. Okay, so in context, I've been drinking all day.
He does not have the right stuff.
I was there. I was the pilot too.
Man,
I had jobs. It was G-force. There was a lot of spinning going on. I felt my face melting because of the pressure. So watching these guys in the film, I could only imagine it was insane. And then I realized that back in the day, you guys just built everything out of metal. Like,
yes.
That was unsafe.
I wrote down, that was one of the...
You sound like you're having flashbacks.
Dude, it was like...
No, you don't understand. This movie, that's the one note I wrote down. Like, say what you will about the film, this thing did a fantastic job showing you how these space shuttles are just slapped together. You could hear the creaks, the groans, their flies buzzing around. Like, you felt like, man, this thing's going to break at any second.
Anytime, yeah. Like, I would not trust it. Like,
in the opening scene.
Oh, yeah.
He's flying. You're like, man, that shit is about to break. That wing about to pop right off. What's going on?
Right. And I know this might sound stupid, but I don't think Neil Armstrong gets enough credit.
No, straight up.
I watched it. I was like, this guy's a daredevil. Like, he had... Back in the 50s, like, you had to be insane to do these things. Like,
oh yeah,
that's like, it's not
guys.
riding it's not riding an airplane.
You hear these stories about how they were...
They're test pilots, man.
Yeah.
They were rushing to get it done because everybody was a big space race, right? We're trying to do it before the Russians.
We're going to beat the Russians.
So you hear these stories about how they just kind of slapped stuff together and it was just a hope and a prayer. But then this movie was the first movie I saw that really gave you the sense of exactly how slapped together everything was. Yeah. I remember the scene where, like, one of the rockets he went up to when he was trying to do, I forget something. You could literally see, like, they took, like, patches of metal and just hammered it in.
Yeah.
Just looked so patchwork.
Patchwork and rivets.
And it was.
And weld, spot weld.
It made me feel it. Like, every time they went up, I was like, man, y'all should be doing that.
Yeah, I had the exact same experience because it gave me, this film does a great job of giving the viewers the experience of being in the cockpit.
Yes.
Closest thing to actually getting into like a G-force simulator or whatever. But like in there, you realize like the danger, the insanity. Yeah, I mean, Father, I don't know. Like, I don't understand.
Wait. I've been in the Apollo because your grandpa worked on one when they built them out here.
Yeah, we were going to mention that.
I've been in there. I've seen it. The Jaeger story when he broke the sound barrier. All of these guys, the right stuff. I used to research all this XR-71 spy planes, the shoot down of what's his name over Russia. I mean, they just slapped these things together. We meant to win, and they had basically grab your nuts and kiss your ass goodbye. These guys were going for broke.
Yeah, definitely.
And you can feel that.
Got that in the film. Or these guys were just like, what is the bare minimum that we need to do to make it, and we're going to do that. And just testing new technology on new frontiers, just like getting that sense of like cutting edge science and physics and just making an accomplishment. And then getting the pilots in there, not trying to pass out like Jesus. Like that's a whole different experience.
Yeah, not only that, but their understanding of the mathematical computation.
I seen
these guys were engineers, These guys understood how this stuff worked.
We saw Hidden Figures. Okay? I know about the ladies.
Yeah. I love the ladies on the ground, but like just being the daredevils that these pilots are, like it's
being strapped to the rocket.
That's why these guys got ticker tape parade.
No, I know, but you have to see this movie. Like Apollo 13 was the one that you felt tension when it first came out with the Tom Hanks. You're like, man, that was really intense. This movie does better than that with the tension.
It does.
There's a scene like one of the scenes where Ryan Gosling's up there and he's trying to dock.
Oh yeah.
And then something goes wrong with the dock and they just start spinning and spinning. And man, I was gripping my armrest. It's unbelievably frightening.
Yeah,
really.
Because like, how can we go into spoiler territory of this film? Because it's like this is history. At this point, guys, like
we all know what happens.
Like at a certain age group, if you're like you know what happened, know about the story. It was on the news, so
it's fine.
Yeah, he's spinning out of control, and he's trying to get his bearings back. All right, 270 is like when the most normal man would pass out. His homie, the cockpit, he's gone. He's gone. He's passed out. Ryan Gosling's still there at like 300, like whatever it is, still
it went off the meter.
It went off the meter. I'm like, I don't know how this man's still alive.
He passed out for a second and then came back.
I thought he was going to die. Like at first.
But you thought that and you were like, wait a minute.
I know he lives. But I felt like he was going to die. And then he survived it and then he came back to work the next day.
There was some stuff that he did. And there was some other stuff, some emotional things that I didn't know about Neil Armstrong. Like, I didn't know he had a daughter who died of a brain tumor very early on, before he even started the Apollo.
I didn't know.
Yeah, that's how the movie starts. He's playing with his daughter. He's talking to her, and he's learning that her memory is going. The brain tumor is getting worse and worse. And so he's trying to be like, hey, what's a kite? What does a kite do? And she doesn't remember certain things. And he's trying to figure it out. He's an engineer. He's trying to solve the problem, and he never is able to.
And you guys remember it now. As good as he was, these weren't the first guys. There was a group of guys that were ahead of him that blew up right there on the land.
They show it in the movie.
No. You're talking about. I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
You're talking about the Challenger, right? Was that before or after?
No, the Apollo rocket. It never left Cape Canaveral.
Yeah. There's another one. Yeah, because he finally makes it to the moon. It's Apollo 11. There's other ones.
Yeah.
10 more.
Well, who was the homie that died? The group that was Apollo. That was not 11.
No,
that was 10.
Was a test. That was just a test. They weren't even supposed to go.
Apollo 11?
They were just testing to make sure that when there was oxygen in there, that it was good and they could still communicate. They were working things out. Then there was a spark, and then they all died. So that is what the movie did the best. Just getting the sense of what it's like in there, how slapped together it was, how intense and frightening it is to be out there. But there's a lot of things that I felt this movie did wrong.
Yeah, and I'll let you go into it, but I just want to back that previous statement up. It made me give a newfound respect to Neil Armstrong, and I know that sounds stupid. I know it does, but it's just like, I'm going to be honest. If I saw like, hey, yo, Neil Armstrong is over there, I would go shake his hand, be like, yo, man, First Moon, I appreciate you.
You could do that. That would be amazing.
But now I'm going over here and be like, you.
Well, he's dead, bro.
He just passed away like a year ago.
I know, but no wonder they made this film. So like, I
think Buzz is still alive. Or is Buzz
Aldrin is. I think he just donated a lot of his stuff to a museum.
Yeah, so if anybody tries to say like landing to the moon was not a big, I would direct them to see this film for those scenes. Like, do you understand what was happening in those?
Yeah, and those conspiracy nuts who say that it was all staged and it was some Hollywood soundstage. Nah, man, that did not happen. Okay, we have family who worked in these programs. Okay, my dad said earlier that he sat in one of the cockpits. No, it was real.
It was real, fellas.
This was some balls to the wall stuff that they did.
Flat earthers, man.
But this is my coffee. What do you?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my coffee. Okay, so what did you gripes about this film, bro?
So okay,
let it out.
The space exploration was amazing, like I said. But the problems with this movie is it just had really weird pacing, and Ryan Gosling was, I thought, really bad. He wasn't horrible. Like you didn't hate seeing him on screen, but as you're watching him, like I realized after watching this that I enjoy watching Ryan Gosling. Like I really liked him in the Blade Runner movie, 2049.
That's what I thought about this film. I thought, hey, the guy from Blade Runner 2049 is in this film. Like he's the same person.
But then I realized, yeah, exactly. He's the same person, and he tries to not speak. He barely had any lines in this movie.
That's something I noticed too. Ryan Gosling did not speak.
And when he does, it's like one sentence, like, oh, maybe you shouldn't say that. Or I'm going to do this. Like very simple lines. Like he mostly acts through his facial expressions. And while that's fine, I just didn't get a sense of who Neil Armstrong was. It just made me feel, like I mentioned his daughter earlier, that seemed to be what was driving him throughout this entire movie. You know, the death of his daughter was really hard for him because he was a stay-at-home dad at the time trying to take care of her. And when she passed, it just was just overwhelming. He didn't talk to anybody about it, not even his wife. And so this whole film, that's kind of in the background as he's doing things, and you can see how he's shutting people out. And I got that, but I never got a sense of who he was. Like, he is an engineering genius, and they mentioned that, but I never really got to see him do any of that.
I agree with you, like, that they do not give you a sense of what Neil Armstrong was, but on that silence in the film gave me a sense of who he was as a person. I thought in my mind that Neil Armstrong would be like a happy, giddy person going to the moon, but he's not. He was like silent. He had like determination and drive.
Yeah.
He reminded me of like, I mean, from my times growing up in the country, like just corn-fed people. Like, you reminded me a lot of my grandfather. Man of very few words, and just like in just the time period of like how, you know, most, I don't want to generalize, but just like the men were. He was like a small town guy. You know, he was just tormented and didn't say much.
Sure.
So I was like, oh, to me, I was like, Neil Armstrong was that type of guy.
And I want
like that. I
want to agree with you on that. The problem is, Ryan Gosling does all these movies where he doesn't have to talk. Driver, all of these things where he speaks very little.
Okay.
And so I'm thinking, like, is that just the Ryan Gosling thing, or is that how Neil Armstrong was? Because I've seen interviews of Neil Armstrong after he's done it. He's been back when he was older and stuff, and he seemed to be more active. Maybe he loosened up as he got older. But, I mean, I just didn't feel like this was him.
For Neil Armstrong, didn't know the man. In terms of Ryan Gosling, if you want to see him talking a lot, go watch a movie called Crazy Stupid Love with Steve Carell.
Oh, yeah, he wasn't.
Yeah, he was, and he talked a lot in that film. So Ryan Gosling can, you know, act through words as opposed to silence.
But lately, he just hasn't.
But, you know, Driver has been that thing. People really praise him for that film, and then 2049, and maybe they just think that he's like that silent, you know.
I think that Driver did so well for him. He just kind of stuck with that shtick. I thought he was great in 2049. I thought he was a perfect balance. Yeah,
I mean, 2049 gave you that. I already feel distant when I watch Ryan Gosling act a little bit, but in that dystopia feeling in that film, I think, he was a whatever they call it, like a runner.
He's a Blade Runner.
He was a Blade Runner, but the names of the
replicants.
Yeah, replicates. So I definitely felt that. So
so it worked. But, you know, outside of him, I don't want to harp on him too much. The movie did have a pacing problem. It had it jumped a lot in time, which I know it had to because it started off before he even started the Apollo program to when he finally landed on the moon, and it was only a 2-hour-something movie.
Yeah, so go ahead.
So it had to jump, but it just, I don't know, it just felt disjointed at times. And they did Buzz Aldrin wrong. Why? Dad, you know this about Buzz Aldrin.
Who's Buzz Aldrin?
The guy that was with him when he went to the moon.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Is he a dick?
Is he a dick in real life? I was like,
every scene that he's in, he says the absolute wrong thing.
Every scene, and like honestly, when they show that guy, I didn't know it was Buzz Aldrin for a little bit in the film. I thought it was like, this must be the third guy on the ship that didn't touch the moon because he's a dick. That's how I felt. There's 3 people that went up, only 2 people touched it. They did not like the third guy.
Yeah, like seriously.
Yeah, I think, if I remember correctly, Buzz had to stay in the ship. I think he was upset about that.
Buzz was on the moon.
Oh, okay. So
Wait, who was the guys that?
Neil Armstrong touched the moon. And
Those are the only two that ever touched. Buzz did touch.
And Buzz touched.
I thought his name was Gustavo or something.
That might be the third guy who stayed in the mothership.
Gustavo's the name of the guy that. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Go.
I think there was always competition between the two.
But it wasn't It wasn't like for example, it was a funeral scene. Some guys was testing something and they died and they're at the funeral, and he was like, "Well, they obviously messed up, right?" He was at the funeral and he just starts saying how it was their fault. And then another scene, he's like, "Well, they're dead now, so there's a
Neil
slap."
Armstrong was more a personality, more circumspect. He did not like the public eye.
Yeah.
Okay. He did not like a lot of attention. He like you said, he was a guy, I think, from Ohio, a meat and potatoes kind of guy. He believed in doing his job, doing it well. He admired
Indiana.
Indiana, okay. He admired Chuck Yeager, who broke the speed barrier back in 1947. He just was a meat and potatoes kind of guy, where I think Buzz was more people person. I think Buzz ended up, if I'm not mistaken, becoming a senator. One of them became a senator.
That would make sense based on his character.
He
rode that wave.
Yeah.
Neil went back and became a university professor of space aeronautics or engineering or something like that. He didn't really stay into the public eye too much. He appreciated what he did. He thought it was an accomplishment. He thought he was doing his job better in his country. I think they're just, when you have that kind of grandiose personality types, daredevil guys willing to do the job, a lot of A-type personalities, I think you're going to have conflict. You're going to have people that just aren't going to get along.
But that's the thing. It wasn't conflict. He was just saying stuff.
They set him up in the film to constantly say the wrong things at the wrong time.
Yeah.
So it's just like the crew member just died. He'd be like, "Well, now it gives me a shot to be on Apollo." What? Everybody's thinking.
So you're viewing this like he's in the movie the whole time, and they're having like a competition.
No, I would have.
Have to see.
I would really. I don't know. You would have to really read like a biography on Buzz.
I'm just curious
from people who actually knew him.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to believe that he would be that callous.
That's why I'm thinking. I think the movie did him a disservice because he was basically not there.
Because all the guys moved up, when the Saturn rocket blew up, a couple of guys, or this accident happened, or this happened. There was different people who were in the lineup first before these guys actually made it.
And they did. They totally showed that in the film. They addressed that. And and it made it seem like that's what was driving Neil a lot of the times, why he didn't want the public eye, because he was like, well, we're already here. We've already sacrificed so much. Why would we stop?
It just made it seem that Neil was like carrying the death of every Oscar.
Yeah.
And essentially every one of them were. Like the entire team was.
And you're the first time there. You're not sure exactly what's going to happen, if it's actually going to work. They're just slapping this stuff together with rivets. You're basically sitting on a Roman candle and somebody lights it on fire, and you're hoping to God it works.
Oh yeah, they gave that impression in the film that it was just slapped together. It's just that in terms of Buzz, like I was wondering if he was really like just known in the public eye to be kind of a dick.
He wasn't.
In the film, they set him up just to be arrogant,
I don't know if he was known as that. But I can imagine after a while, it was always Neil Armstrong, then Buzz Aldrin. It was always Neil first. Neil, because of that first step. In what he said.
Well, this is all before we even got to that part.
So after, like, basically, there's no exposition after, like, touching the film moon landing, right? Sure. That's kind of like the final scene or whatever. So it's like it's not the life afterwards. So that's what's curious. It's like in this film,
they don't portray him that way in the movie called The Right Stuff with the 7 astronauts. They don't portray him that way. He's not portrayed as a weenie.
Yeah, I don't. I just feel like
Clint Eastwood directed that.
I just feel like they did him wrong. I don't know much about him, but you just didn't like him from jump. And like they made him, every time he came in, he would say something stupid. And like, but I'm like, the whole time I'm watching, I'm like, I know he's the only other guy to be on the moon, so give him some respect. Like it seemed like the movie had an agenda against him, and I'm not sure why.
I think Neil was the only one that was introspective, real quiet. All the other guys, these guys drove Corvettes, drove fast cars. They did. They were kind of really out there. They're the Chuck Yeagers of the world.
And we got those guys. Those guys were great.
I don't know why they would portray Buzz Aldrin that way.
That's what we asked.
You have to see it to see what
idea.
I'm talking about because he's in it so little.
And I don't know enough. I would have to read somebody's biography or some notes about him. But the guy he just passed away, and his family.
Buzz too?
I think Buzz.
I thought Buzz is still alive.
He's still alive. He just donated a whole bunch of stuff.
But besides,
seemed like a nice guy.
Yeah, he seemed all right. But again, you don't know what he's like back then versus now.
Yeah,
so
I have no idea.
But another part of the movie that, besides its pacing, it ends very strangely. It ends super weird.
Yeah, it's kind of because Neo's relationship with his wife is interesting. Not a lot of love, like romantic scenes between them. Not like in the bed, but just like building that chemistry between husband and wife, and just like the way it ends, it kind of ends abruptly. It ends in a spot you wouldn't think it would end.
Yeah.
It's strange. And if like that was like, I don't know, I really didn't know what to think of.
I hated it,
because it's between him and his wife, and like that's like the connection.
But they didn't. That's the thing that drove me. Like he had just came back from the moon. He's in quarantine because they didn't know what kind of pathogens he might have. They'd never been there before. So he's in quarantine. She's finally get a chance to see him, but through glass, and they just stare at each other. There's no smiles,
no nothing.
Just they literally, it's like 2 minutes of them just staring at each other, and then he kisses the glass, and then they cut.
You got to understand. Back, they did a movie from the wife's perspective. I forgot what it was called of all these men. They were expected to look a certain way, play a certain part. Comport themselves a certain way. Everything needed to be done that way. And if you're meat and potatoes type people, a lot of people come from an era where they don't think they need to say.
No, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like where he was just this kind of aloof man and she was supposed to be a dutiful wife. This was a private interaction. It was just the two of them.
It was just a closed room with the both of them. It's just like you feel like she would be happy or he would be happy to see each other because they like it made it back, but it wasn't there. And it's just like,
and I thought
I feel like for that complicated ending emotionally, they really needed to dive more into
there was a movie,
wife and husband relationship for that ending to work.
Where all the wives' relationships and supporting these husbands and the toll that it took on a lot of their marriages and how it did create huge problems.
Sure, yeah, I get that.
I mean, you're basically signing up, I think one of the wives, quote unquote, I'm paraphrasing, basically you're signing up to commit suicide and I'm supposed to be happy for you on this untested, undiagnosed thing. No one's ever tried it before, and you're going to leave me with 3 or 4 kids or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be smiling happy for it.
But that's the thing. They didn't talk about that in the film. So like there's all these things that we know outside of the film because it's historical. But they didn't dive into that. So the tone didn't fit that. It didn't work. They didn't talk about that dynamic.
Now this movie is based upon, I believe, his autobiography. So whatever didn't make it into the movie.
Yeah, so that's what's so interesting about like really learning his dynamic with his wife during that time. It could have, relationships change over the years, but during that time period, just how like really they did not talk about it. Like just like he went to work, the wife, they showed some scenes where the wife is, waiting to hear news or upset, but it was really not her story, but it's just how him as a person just kind of avoid any conversation issue from what they gave at the film. So it was,
hearing that it's based on his autobiography, that I wish they would have explained that in the film. Yeah. If they had done like have him writing it or something, and then it hadn't gone back and shown the whole movie, it would have given me a different perspective because I can see, knowing that, how it could be a retrospective, how you're seeing where you made mistakes and how you interacted with people. But not having that context in the film, it just made it awkward.
Yeah.
Now, did they show the birth of their child after their daughter died?
Yeah, they didn't show they showed that the child,
the third son?
the child came in, but
showed him.
They showed her pregnant, and then the child was just there,
which is kind of interesting because maybe he wasn't even there for the birth. That's why it was not in the movie.
Again, I have no idea.
See, that would have been like the phone call to have, or at least show the wife at the hospital.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying when I said they skip through time. Like sometimes we'll be in a scene, the next thing we're at a barbecue, but it's like 5 years later. Sometimes they do show like the year and then so you can get some context. But they just kind of run through it. So it did have some faults. But out of everything, I would highly suggest everyone see it in the theater, like you mentioned earlier, Josh, because of those space scenes. They are very powerful. All of those rocket blasts and everything that goes into that is just so amazing. You have to see it on the big screen. You have to feel it.
Yeah, I'm on the edge of my seat holding my breath for those scenes, and it's like, they're very intense.
They're extremely intense. And they did a good job. When they finally make it to the moon, it's silent. There's no sound. And they play the actual audio from Houston and Neil Armstrong.
As they should.
So all the interaction was the real audio. So that was cool, and I liked that little touch.
It was Michael Collins who got left on the ship.
Okay.
He touched the moon. And, from his wife's perspective, matter of fact, he is from Ohio.
Oh, he is? I thought they said Indiana in the movie.
He's from Cincinnati, Ohio. From his wife's perspective, he was a pilot during the Korean War. Then he came out and became a test pilot. I mean, she's constantly living with the threat, like a police officer. This guy's not coming home, but he's signing up to do this over and over.
I see what you're saying, but I'm saying the movie didn't tell me that. That's the problem.
It was just one of those things.
These are all things that we know because we know this story or we're reading it in books. But the movie itself, if I knew nothing, if I'm a teenager right now and I went to go see this movie, I didn't learn too much about how he interacted with his family.
Well, I think, and that's what's crazy. I would say that watching, I felt I learned. He didn't.
Yeah.
That's how, I was like, that gave me, that corn-fed mentality of meat and potatoes. He was just kind of a closed-off man, especially with, he didn't know how to deal with his own emotions. And speaking of, can I touch on that scene? Or,
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, so, when they finally arrive, I did not know this, and I don't know if it's true, but it gives me a new perspective in the film. He gets to the moon, and he goes to a cradle, and he has the bracelet of his deceased daughter, and he tosses it in the cradle, essentially burying his daughter on the moon. And, that, for me...
That's always been a rumor. I wonder if that's actually true.
Well, if you said it's based on the autobiography, it must be true.
Yeah.
It's an authorized biography where they interview his family.
Biography or autobiography?
Authorized biography.
Okay, so he just told
interviewed his family and friends and himself to this guy, and that's what this movie is based upon. But I always thought that was just rumor and conjecture.
Well, I never heard of the rumor before. So when watching this film, it just gave me the way they set up the film of this man is distant with his family. He's on a mission to get to the moon. He doesn't care about anything else. And then the only reason he got there was so he could bury his daughter for it's worth it for him.
Yeah, that was
while the other guy's jumping on the moon.
He's having a great time.
Yeah, he's over there crying, having a funeral, and it's just that gave me some interest.
Yeah, it was very touching.
Man, it was touching.
That's what made the ending worse. Yeah. Because he gets back and you think he would tell his wife after all these years of not talking about his daughter.
Maybe it just didn't make it into the film. I don't know. I'd have to read the autobiography.
Maybe.
Read the book.
It just, as a film, you see that moment, you're finally, everybody in the audience, when it happened, was oh, everybody got it, and it hit us all. It was very emotional. So when he got home and he finally sees his wife, you're thinking he's going to finally say something like, I buried her up there, or I left her up there. Something, because they had never talked about his daughter's death.
Or to say, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done.
But nothing. It just cuts. And that was so anticlimactic. It just disappointed me.
Now you're going to make me want to read up passages from the book to see if they said anything about it. That's a very deep thing. I always thought that was a rumor of him burying.
But it makes sense. Nobody be able to know. And if it's true, it's still up there tonight.
Well, if he did it, he did.
Yeah. So and that was very good. They did a great job with that because that book ended. That's how it started. Started with her.
I kind of believe he did. I mean, the man he came up with the famous line, spur of the moment. He just came out of his head. Okay. He didn't rehearse it. He just boom, one giant step.
And I was so glad. I was wondering. When they get there, is Ryan Gosling going to have to do this? Because, I don't know if he can pull it off because the brother not speaking. And then when they started, when I saw them in the cockpit and they were using the actual Houston thing, and then they were having the actors talk back, I was like, oh, okay.
You're going to actually.
So they did the whole. It was Neil Armstrong.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
Which made it kind of interesting because it's it seemed like Ryan Gosling's voice because he doesn't talk during the film. So when he's talking at those points, it's just like it felt natural.
And he did do the cadence right. He did get his vocal patterns down.
Oh, okay.
So artistically, that was done pretty well.
Yeah. So overall,
audio-wise.
Yeah, so overall, like I said, see it in the theater for the space scenes. It's well worth it. You will love every one of those scenes, but understand that there's going to be some pacing problems, some things that don't always work in terms of dialogue and character interactions, but overall, I think it's a pretty good movie. It wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. I expected a little bit more, but I didn't hate it. I wasn't disappointed.
I'll give it like a 3.5.
Yeah.
3.5 spaceship.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. It's kind of like middle of the road. Like it's hard to say because those scenes in space are so powerful, but the rest of it drags it down.
I had no driver to see this movie. I guess.
Same here. I didn't have no desire.
When I was little, I was a big fan of the Mercury and the Gemini projects and Chuck Yeager and all this. I used to study and read this stuff like crazy. Even took your brother over there to NASA and space and all that other stuff. That to make another movie about it at this point, it just seemed really anticlimactic. I didn't see where they could go with it.
Yeah,
I had no interest in.
I'm not a big fan of space films unless like sci-fi. And I had no desire to see this historical tale on this mission. But when I was watching it, I recommend seeing it in theaters if you are going to watch this film. I feel like streaming won't do it justice.
Yeah,
like
you won't.
The surround sound, those scenes where he's testing and really giving you the sense of what he had to go through on a daily basis. The theater will capture that much better, and I think that's a reason alone enough to go see this film, just to like really comprehend what these men and what men had to go through.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So see it in D-Box, huh?
I mean, D-Box, regular seat, it don't matter. Like you gonna feel the tension.
D-Box, what is it? D-Box where they shoot the bullets, the air comes at you too in the water. Or is that the 4D one?
That's the 4D. It hits your senses and all that. So,
but yeah, so that's I guess our takes on it. So people, let us know. Send us some emails and let us know if you got a chance to see either of these films and what you thought about them. If you agreed with us, disagreed with us, anything, just let us know what you thought. We'd love to hear from you.
We definitely like to know why people think Buzz Aldrin is slightly off color or why he was portrayed that way.
Yeah, I don't know. I still say that they did him wrong in this movie. He was just every time he popped in, he said something wrong.
The man was a dick in the film.
Like every second. But whatever. If it is Neil, maybe Neil just didn't like him and he put it in the autobiography and it's just like, man, make him look bad as possible.
Could be.
This has been an Audio Mind production.